What is the speed of light?
186,000 miles per second.
Who wrote Vande Mataram?
Bankim Chandra Chatterjee.
In which year did Tagore win the Nobel Prize?
Which is the smallest state in the world?
Which is the largest living creature?
Where is the? What is the? How to do? Which is the? When was the?
When?
Where? Which? Why? How?
How? Which? When?
What is the weight of the moon? What is the weight of the moon?
Shadi Rojun.
What is the weight of the moon?
এর সঙ্গে চাকরির কি সম্পর্ক?
That's not for you to judge, young man.
তোমাকে যা জিজ্ঞেস করা হচ্ছে যদি জানো তাহলে উত্তর দাও।
জানি না।
You may go now.
Hello. Welcome to today's podcast. Today we have a very special guest and a very special topic, both initiated by our guest, I think, which I think so. I will double check. But so our guest here, again, I don't know if there's any guest who I've invited who have been introduced to anywhere outside of Filmstagram. So I guess thank you to Filmstagram in a way. But this is Maze of Mumblings, if you know her writing, which we will plug in the descriptions later on also. But I've collaborated with her on a post on Martin Scorsese's Faith Trilogy. I think that's right. Faith Trilogy.
The Holy Trifecta.
The Holy Trifecta. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And yeah, I've read her writing and we've discussed a lot of things and we wanted to bring her on this podcast for a while now. So you can say hi to everyone, our audience, whoever listens to this podcast. This is Anisha.
Hi guys, this is like the first podcast for me and I'm like a bit nervous. I don't know how to, go about it, but then I guess I have really good people around, so that wouldn't be a problem.
It shouldn't, hopefully we do encourage the discussion rather than be annoying people about it. Amartya and we can be, but it's fine. But yeah, no, the topic we are discussing today is actually very specific also because we have two Bengalis on this podcast and it's related to, okay, I have to mention that, right? Like, or should I not? Is that like
No. It just puts a lot of expectations, reasonably so, but still, you get that.
Yeah, like, okay. The topic in discussion today is the Calcutta Trilogy by Satyajit Ray. And to do the honors of discussing this, I will actually hand it over to Amartya and Anisha because I think they both are better at sort of introducing what we are getting into. After which we will also discuss sort of our introductions to Ray and then the individual films involved and everything that follows. Also, disclaimer before we start, everything here will be a spoiler. We aren't going to like sort of tiptoe around the discussions of the individual films and what they are sort of together also. So we would highly encourage you to watch all of these films, then listen so that you can sort of get a cohesive and sort of in-depth idea of what we're talking here. So yes, go ahead guys. I have set the stage up for stuff.
So Amartya can start. Like, I'm a bit awkward right now. I'll slowly get out of that awkward.
Amartya only I meant. Sorry, I said Anisha also. No, Amartya, you had to do it. Sorry.
So everybody's pushing this on me. Cool.
Yeah.
To all the Bengalis listening, I'm sorry if I make any mistakes, honestly, because I don't even know what the hell am I doing sometimes. So the 70s, because these are three movies set predominantly in the 70s. 70s in Bengal was a very tumultuous decade, to put it very mildly. And we are 50 years removed from that. If you ask anybody right now what they know about what they know about the 70s and the political side of it, if you ask any Bengali, there's a striking difference between if you ask any Bengali, if you ask any other person here, that either they're extremely unaware or the most they've heard of this is from their parents or their grandparents about. I remember that time was extremely bad. That time was extremely violent, And at the very least, there is a premonition that the violence which had been described was actually pretty brutal, because the political situation that has been described in both Calcutta trilogies, by the way, both Satyajit Ray as well as Meenanshan, the predominant backdrop is the Naxalite movement. The Naxalite movement, which had started in 1967, actually at a district called Naxalbari, which is a couple of kilometers away from Siliguri. So the leader and the ideologue of that uprising, his name was Charu Majumdar, who theorized that the situation which had occurred in Naxalbari due to a land deal between tribals and their landlords, Charu Majumdar decided that he would launch an armed protracted people's war. I'm not going to explain much of what a protracted people's war actually means, but it's basically a mixture. It's basically a mixture of mobile warfare and guerrilla warfare. Okay. Anyway, my point being that he wrote it. He wrote a historic 8-page manifesto and everything. There was actually a split between the current Communist Party, between Charu Majumdar and another person. I don't exactly remember the name. Point being, this is happening simultaneously as the country was entering into the 70s and Indira Gandhi was already coming into power. So you can imagine what the situation is going on at the moment, because during the 70s, as this occurrence is happening, the Congress starts to launch countermeasures, because these Naxalite movements, they needed recruits. So they became a form of alternative movement for people to follow or rally around, especially from the student circles. People who are coming out of their educational bubble and just exploring the world and seeing an alternative movement against the current government. Obviously, that's a kind of a golden goose for them. So and then the counter insurgency sort of occurs from the Congress side. 1975, the emergency is declared. So you can understand lots of things are occurring during that moment. And it clearly, filmmakers during that time, the filmmakers who were actually, people who are sympathizing, not even sympathizing per se. There are some who were sympathizing. There are some who are objective. But people were conscious of the things happening around them.
Like artists always are, I feel.
Like artists always
are. Serious artists.
Serious artists, which are currently quite a bit missing in this current age. But there you go.
We've had that rant, Amartya.
But it's true, right? But it's true, right? So you get the idea here. And the Calcutta Trilogy, what we see here is, it's called the Calcutta Trilogy, not the Bengal Trilogy. Because Ray was in love with his city to such an extent that he could understand the pulse of the city down to its crevices. And he decided to explore that through 3 different strata. Both the student side, the people, the working class side, and the upper echelon or the bourgeoisie, however you want to call it.
The colonialists. Is that the way to put it?
Yeah, more or less, The colonialists.
I mean, that's a great introduction. Thank you for that, Amartya. No need to pat yourself down next time, because this was a great context. I think for whoever, especially I wasn't aware much. So thank you for filling me and the other listeners also in. Before we sort of delve deep into each of the sort of entries, I kind of just wanted to ask you about your introductions to Ray. We can start with Anisha there and then jump to Amartya, and then I can chip in.
So, my introduction to Ray was obviously in my childhood, where I watched movies like Hirok Rajar Deshe and Gopi Bain Baka Bain. Those are movies that every Bengali kid probably watches while she or he is really small, and the parents are the ones who introduce them to these movies. However, me watching them properly, so that I have the capacity to review or critique them, is quite recently. Me watching movies in general in order to review or critique them is a very recent activity, or something that I've picked up very recently during the pandemic. So my first serious watch of Ray movie would be Mohanagar. And that really happens to be my favorite as well. Like Mohanagor is also about Kolkata. It's a different take on Kolkata. It's a feminist take on how the city like molds a woman's life as opposed to a man's life differently. So that I don't know why that isn't a part of a Calcutta trilogy, but then again, trilogy means 3 films and hence.
Yeah.
So that was how I got started with Ray. And then I had watched movies like Mahapurush and Kapurush. And then I rewatched films like Hirok Rajar Deshe and Gopi Bhain Bhagavain. So then I watched it in a very separate, different perspective. And I feel that he has always been a very approachable filmmaker, and that is why I liked him a lot. Because although he has been talking about a lot of things which are quite important, like feminism itself is a very important political movement, if you say. And then again, he talked about the difficult political times in Calcutta during this, while he was making Calcutta Trilogy. Then he talked about what the star culture, etc., meant when he was shooting Nayok. And every film of his touches upon one thing or the other. But while he does that, he happens to be very oriented to his characters. Like we get to know the story of that character, and then through him we kind of understand what was going on, what is the bigger picture. So that is something that I really like, and that is why people around the globe was not essentially scared off from his films, or they didn't feel that, oh, because I'm not a Bengali, I wouldn't be understanding what this film meant, because it was never about being a Bengali. It was about those people, and people are of similar nature all around the world. So that is briefly how I got introduced to it.
Yeah, no, that's a great sort of actually summary also of what Ray, and or at least I get from Ray also, as you've said, and I'm not Bengali, but like again, the specificity of getting the universal out of the sort of specifics. Almost,
so there's this thing that the more specific you become, your story becomes more universal. Like, because Martin Scorsese talked about really specific topics or really specific stories out of his childhood, out of the Italian people that he grew up seeing. I guess that is why we also started connecting, because he was being true to himself and he was being true to the stories that he told. And then we understood, okay, wait, some of these traits are present in people I know as well. So that is how I guess it works.
Yeah, definitely. And and I know you pronounce, so I already am apologizing for the way I'll pronounce the titles of all his films names, because I know I can't mimic that.
That is not a problem.
Use a lot of O's.
I heard Anisha's pronunciation of Mahanagar, and I was like, I say Mahanagar, and I was like, oh, okay, even that is pronounced differently. I didn't know that. So, but yes, anyways, my stupid comment aside, say, Amartya, your introduction to Ray.
Like Anisha said, every Bengali kid is, fed a dollop of, Ray's child kids movies, more or less. It's like, the Gopi Bhain Bhagavain trilogy, Gopi Bhain Bhagavain, Hirok Rajar Deshe, and then you also have the 2 Feluda movies. So I grew up with the Feluda movies. I grew up with Sonar Kella.
True, actually, yes. I remember Feluda films more than I remember like watching Gopi Bhain Bhagavain or Hirok Rajar Deshe. I loved the Feluda films.
Grew up with the 2 Feluda films, Sonar Kella and Joy Baba Feluda. Interesting story there also, that I saw Sonar Kella after I read the book.
Okay.
And if you don't know what the difference between the book and the movie is, it's very simple. The book is the who done it. The movie is the why done it.
Okay, interesting. I've never read the book, so
he introduced the villain within the first act in the movie. He doesn't introduce the villain at all until the third act.
Okay, so he fundamentally changed okay.
And if you understand it from a kid's perspective, who is say 10 or 11 years old, who has just read the book, and you're realizing, wait, what is he doing? And then your mind completely shifts, because then you're like, oh, this is a race.
Yeah, it's a race film.
It's a race. And then you realize, oh, you can do that. And that is the fundamental belief you have every time you watch a Ray film. Oh, you can do that. Oh, you can do that in this decade. Oh, you can show that in this decade. And then you start to realize, oh yes, it is because of what he did that people also showed the same things.
Yep.
He was a pioneer in that regard. But it's also the debate we have through about, Kurosawa and Ozu. Who is more Japanese, who is more westernized?
That's going to be that's a prevailing debate that will always remain with Ray, I think.
Yeah, so in that regard, it's like even Ray, the approachability of Ray, I think, is because he was a very character-driven. His stories always were very character-driven.
Yep.
At least his PV, at least the 50s. I think, and again, I haven't seen all of his movies. I haven't seen the biggest ones anyway. You all know which I'm talking about. You all know which I'm talking about. I'm not going to reveal it because I'll be murdered by Bengalis. So there you go. But the point is, at least from what I have seen, he had a very sympathetic eye towards all his characters, especially women.
I think he's often said, like he's often mentioned in the same breath as Ozu in terms of humanism or whatever, the humanist impulse, right? That idea. Yeah. Which is again weird
considering the fact that I'm talking about all the women characters in his films. The Calcutta Trilogy doesn't have many.
But it does a remarkable job, I think, with the women characters, even in their absence.
Yeah, but there is I think there is a specific reason for that. I think there are articles that also cite that specific reason. Because if we look at it from the 70s perspectives, 70s led by Indira Gandhi, a woman prime minister, ideally speaking, that should be the time when women characters were more free, women characters were more liberal. Ideally, that's what it should have been. It wasn't. It's like a form of exegesis in a way. You are excising them out even more. Sure, the women characters were there. Sure, the women characters, those who were in the upper echelon, they were free to do a lot of stuff. But as we see in both Pratidwandi as well as Jana Aranya, with the women characters, as little as they are, they're still constricted by the own societal rules.
Yeah.
And even if they were liberal, even if they were free to do what they wanted, it's always under a supervision from a male perspective. It was never actually how they wanted to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I think their absence to holds a certain sort of meaning in Ray's own trilogy.
Yeah.
But anyway,
no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you guys have like nice sort of nostalgic memories. I got introduced academically. I got introduced via international cinema class where I watched. I think we were meant to watch Pyasa, but we didn't have like the print for class, so we had watched Pathar Panchali. No, actually, no, never mind. I wrote an essay on Pathar Panchali for that class. We had to select a film from sort of national cinemas and whatever. And I was like, oh, I haven't seen a Ray film. Let me try because everyone loves him. And I was just getting into cinema at that moment in time. So I've seen the legendary trilogy, which Amartya is refraining from mentioning.
Yes.
So I've seen the Appu trilogy, and I'm a huge, like I kind of had my revelation of sort of Ray with that, but I'm very interested in his other work. Like I think in a way as Anisha had mentioned, Mahanagar / the big city in English is one of my favorites also. It's just such a refreshing, because I think he's moved, like I think one of the problems as sort of a film student, or as a film critic, analyst, or whatever you want to term it as, that is, we've kind of boxed, or maybe I've kind of also had boxed Ray in that sort of, he only makes neorealist, grounded sort of your Appu trilogy types of films, but he can be extremely good at plotting his films out. Like your Mahanagar is a realist film, of course, but it's really expertly plotted out, and the characters have like very detailed and very precise arcs. Same goes with a lot of Calcutta Trilogy. Like I think a lot of them are and they are written from novels. I'm not sure how many films he's written on his own, like without or has not adapted from, because all three films here we are going to discuss are adapted
Yeah,
from
Yeah, a
novels,
lot of
right?
his films have been adapted. In fact, there's this one book on him, Ray, where he on Ray. I was gifted the book, but I exactly don't remember the name of it. I have the book here.
Yeah.
It's called Deep Focus. Deep Focus, Satyajit Ray. It's by Sham like it's
Sam
forwarded by Sham Benegal. So
Okay.
here he says that how like we shouldn't be reductively looking at his films the moment we think that, okay, this is something that has been adapted from a movie. Sorry, this is something that has been adapted from a story by somebody
Yeah.
else. So he says that that is primarily because what Amartya was saying, that the story of Shonar Kella or the story of Joy Baba Felunath is quite different from the movie that was made
He
out of
made,
it,
yeah.
right? Similarly, moving image will have a separate kind of story to tell, a separate kind of narrative to put forward, as opposed to a written word. And a written word is something that will that you will have a personal relationship with. For you, like for me, Feluda is Shomitra. For somebody else,
Same.
Feluda could be Shoboshachi. For the other person, Feluda could be an absolutely different person. So we all have our different kinds of Feluda, and we have the idea, and we have this opportunity only because Feluda has been written first, and then it has been like adapted by Shondip Roy later on and Satyajit Ray before him. So that is what, like, it adds to the universality of the story as well. You are able to think of these characters in your head first, and then you watch the movies. That just adds to the experience. That is what he has been like touching upon in this particular book as well.
Some might say to the detriment. Some might say to the detriment of Bengali cinema.
But there are few movies where he had written the screenplay independently. I don't exactly remember which movies.
Shatranj Ke Khiladi and all that.
Shatranj Ke Khiladi, is it based on a book? I don't think
I'm not sure. I've not seen that. Charulata, I don't know about. Like if
Charulata is based on a short story.
Of course.
Story.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a short story. It is.
Okay. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't know his last film. That he made.
Agontuk, The Stranger.
I don't know.
Was it based on a? I don't think it's based on a book.
Yeah. So again,
I am not exactly remembering. There was Kanchanjunga. I think there was this one movie called Kanchanjunga, and I think he was the one who had who like wrote the screenplay and independently wrote it. I don't think that was something which was adapted from a book or adapted from a story.
Also not sure if Aparajito or Apur Sansar are books. I think Pathr Panchali is.
Pathr Panchali is definitely the book.
That is, but I don't know if the sequels are just built from the narrative of that. I don't know. So
could entirely be possible.
Yeah.
Again, I wouldn't know. But then again, cool.
Same here, Amartya. I haven't watched Calcutta Trilogy the way I should have. Like I probably have watched Pathr Panchali when I was a child, but the frenzy that goes around, like me not watching Calcutta Trilogy, makes me even angrier. Which is why I don't want to watch it till such time I organically want it.
Also, these movies.
But I'm scared that people will murder me right now. But like, they shouldn't.
I was about to say, please don't put watching it off because of that fear, because the films are incredible. Is my point.
No. I admit the films are incredible. The difference here is, like, your perspective is you came to it from actual school, international film class. You were being taught organically as part of a film curriculum.
Yeah.
Ours wasn't that.
Yeah.
When we grow up, we are being told there is this filmmaker.
I know,
to be fair to all Bengalis and all Bengalis listening, don't murder me. Bengalis have almost an unhealthy love for Ray. To the extent, okay, I'm not going to say to the extent, unhealthy love for Ray, and Pathr Panchali is being held as some sort of a pedestal. I truly believe that it deserves that pedestal. I'm not discounting that. But that is intimidating. Yeah. And it's also a context thing, because like she said, she saw Pathr Panchali when she was very young. I'm extremely sure she wouldn't understand what was going on.
I mean, it's very, very sparse in terms of narratives. Yes. Very sparse. Like, I'm surprised.
If I'm not wrong, he's very inspired by Renoir, right?
Yeah, all the Italian and the French at that time, big influence on him. So, like, there's been
Contextualization.
Recontextualizations, critiques of the film also as quote and which I think are pretty disingenuous and not good, which call it as quote unquote poverty porn, which I don't believe it to really fall under it.
Look, honestly, if I am going to rediscover Ray after watching a lot of other people and finally getting back to Ray, and if that is the way it has to be for me to finally understand what makes Ray great, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because as far as I've seen his movies, which are collectively 5 of them at this point, I get it. I get why Bengalis have an unhealthy obsession with the guy. The guy was something.
Yeah.
The guy knew exactly, like I was talking, what makes filmmakers great is their instinct. Ray was instinctual. You can understand what he's doing. Each and every method, there is a control there in his filmmaking. Yeah. You don't see that control always.
Yeah. No, but that's, I think before we just move on to the trilogy, I was just about to say that with his films, we've talked about how they're adapted from novels, right? But they really don't feel like it most of the time, that they are based on material. Like we've discussed this before about adaptations and how sometimes you can almost detect that this film is taken from a book, whereas if I didn't read the fact that Pratidwandi and all these, we'll get to Jana Aranya, I think that's the only film I think which feels a little bit.
Yeah, but then again, the last two movies like Seemabaadha and Jana Aranya are adapted from Shankar's novels, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not wrong. And Shankar's another very famous novel is Chonungi, which again, I think Shankar's novels are adapted quite a bit for movie purposes. And those days people knew the distinction very well between what is a novel and what is an adaptation, because the medium shift and how you have to constrict and streamline the narrative for a medium change.
Yeah.
These people had a very clear idea about how to do that.
Yeah. So basically you're implying that now people don't.
No, I'm not saying now people don't. I'm saying that people nowadays have a lot more options. People can, choose to be more novelistic. That's why there are tons of miniseries more.
Like miniseries, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, yes.
Yeah, those days, that wasn't exactly a very viable option because budget and a lot of other stuff was there.
Yeah.
So you had to, change a couple of things to make it fit into an adaptation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Okay. So I have no organic way to transition into the Calcutta Trilogy. So I'm just going to cut parts of whatever I said behind and then move on to this. So
let's move on to Calcutta Trilogy.
Yes.
Use this as the segue.
Yes. But the first, we're going to go chronologically. So it's going to be, first we're going to discuss Pratidwandi, also called The Adversary. And which is released in 1970, right?
1971.
So, is it? Okay.
I think so. Check once.
I mean, I had written 1970, so that's why I'm. So,
okay, that's cool.
Yes. No, but anyways.
Yeah, so this is about a guy who was like a part of a medical school, and then he had to leave because his father died in the middle of his course, and he really had to earn for his family members, and it was difficult for him to go on with his job, and there started his quest for a new job, and that is when our movie begins. So when we already discussed what the condition of Kolkata was when the movie had started. Like, it was really bad, and unemployment was one of the most important problems that plagued a lot of Bengali households. And it was really difficult to go around it. As in, it's really unthinkable at right now, because most of us have a lot of ways of getting a job.
Hmm.
There is something called a LinkedIn, there's something
Hmm.
called HR. We can like call them, email them, and it's quite easy for us to at least get in touch with the opportunities which will lead us to a job.
Yeah.
As opposed to that, during those times, it was very difficult, and we had the people had to go physically to various places, first apply for the jobs, and then when the applications were long listed, then go on to interviews. That is when our protagonist's journey starts. And our protagonist's journey happens to be a very sad one, because it's not like Somnath of Jana Aranya. He had a lot of pressure that Somnath did not have. And hence, his way of world viewing was very different. And his approach to this job market, his like meandering through the interviews was also quite different than what Somnath's was. So like, there were three heroes around when we are talking about this Calcutta Trilogy, right? There's Siddhartha, there is Shyamulendu, and then there is Somnath. So out of the three, only Shyamulendu was like successful in securing a job in the the conventional way, because he was able to answer in a similar manner.
He was able to conform more or less,
Exactly. He was able to do that. But both Somnath and Siddhartha was not able to procure a job through these job interviews. But understand, Somnath wanted to. Somnath gave all the possible answers that was possible for him to know. He was asked the most absurd and random questions. He tried his best to give the answers. He tried his best to sort of get his job as soon as possible. But Siddhartha was not that. Like, he knew very well that talking about the Vietnamese people at this time of Kolkata was quite like a risky task to do. But I don't know why, like, when that is what we will be getting at probably. Siddhartha really couldn't care less. Like, he thought about a thing, he told that. Because in him, there was a rebel. And throughout the movie, we see how that rebel in him slowly unravels, and why he feels at loggerheads with himself, with his inner self, because he's unable to portray that unabashed self of it.
Hilariously, if all the three characters actually met in a single location and tried to talk, none of them would interact. Each of them would hate each other. Honestly.
I think it's impossible for them to even be in the same space.
I think Siddhartha and Somnath would actually try to get along. Yeah. Shyamulendu could care less.
He can't look that down.
He can't look that down.
Too far down. Right?
It's too far down for him. But and I think what struck me about Pratidwandi was how different the filmmaking is. It's a handle cam. It's like he's trying to record Kolkata during a very specific period. Yeah. You know, the specificity of the period, the hustle and bustle during that period. When the movie opens, guy is hanging from the bars. The ticket checker is taking the ticket. He takes the ticket. He has a chart paper here. He takes the ticket, he puts it in the pocket, and he then gives it back. That amount of dexterity, believe it or not, that still happens. And but nobody has captured that so smoothly. Or
the camera, the DOP, I think for all of his films is Somendu Roy, if I'm not wrong.
The top shot from the hotel, right? From I think it is from the Grand Hotel where he's walking and there's a zebra crossing. That shot.
The stuck between two parts of life.
Stuck between that shot. Or the negative shots,
that was I was a bit thrown off by the negative opening also, where it opens in like actually you mentioned opening. It opens actually at the funeral.
Yeah, right? It opens with his father's like not funeral, like the day his father dies, and like they take the dead body to like to the place that they have to emulate it. So that is that's something that even Anupama talked about in one of her reviews, because she saw it very recently in Cannes. That like she
saw the restored print. She saw the restored print.
Acha, jo basically the good print, because we didn't get a good print on YouTube.
Oh my God, it's so difficult to get a good print.
Yeah.
So she said that he started experimenting with stuff like this. Like this is just one of his ways of filmmaking that he was experimenting with. And then I also showed you this video from
Video,
Studio
yeah.
Binder where he was talking about how he randomly chanced upon this concept of bounce lighting, and later on he came to know that there was somebody else who wrote a book about how they discovered bounce lighting, and then he's like, wait a minute, we have been doing it for a while now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
I
it's
think that was one of his experimentations.
this kind of goes also to back to the point where I had also mentioned the fact that we make a mistake of boxing in filmmakers, right? Like the idea of, like if someone watches or knows about Satyajit Ray and you watch the opening scene of Pratidwandi, it's like, what has the printer has the is there some problem with the print on YouTube? Why is it all like in negative? But he's as you were saying about there, like the whole, it's a remarkably well, not, I don't want to say well, but it's remarkably stylized in a way. In a non-flashy, but
it's very stylized.
It has a distinct style to it, which I don't associate with Ray's other films, which is
because
a good thing.
Because a word which has always been used to describe Ray is very formalistic.
Yeah,
he's a very formalist filmmaker.
Yeah.
So this experiment, I think someone compared him to Godard in this case, which is like, okay then.
It's not a bad comparison.
At all. But yeah.
This is French New Wave, sort of whatever that movement was going on at that time. And the jump cuts are there and a lot of freeze frames are there. You get like some jump. Yeah, exactly. So it's all littered with that.
There is also a strange, funny connection to Jana Aranya from Pratidwandi. When Siddhartha is asked, name the most significant moment currently. Yeah. He says the people's response to Vietnam, literally. Yeah. That's what he said. Yeah. And they were like, not the moon landing.
Yeah.
The callback here is, in Jana Aranya, Somnath, after a serious round of interviews, with montages and everything, he's asked one of the most randomest questions ever. What is the weight of the moon?
Yeah.
What is the weight of that? Is so bizarrely absurd.
He's also like, what does this have to do with the job interview?
Yeah,
right?
and the unfortunate and sometimes the worst part of all of this is it shouldn't be relatable. It is. That's the worst part. It is. There are many interviews which are still like this.
No, I think that's the whole the lingering quality or the idea that these films continue to sort of reverberate.
You can also see a sort of colonial hangover each and every time, Siddhartha or Somnath, when they go to interviews, and the higher ups, they're always talking in a very accented, very fast-paced British.
I was about to ask you guys, like the use of English in the whole trilogy is fascinating, like to me at least, just because
it's fast-paced.
If you listen to Ray as well, his English is also quite different from what my or your English would be, because his is a very heavily accented English, because I'm guessing that is because of his schooling probably, and at that point of time the only people that they could refer to were the ones who spoke English in that particular manner, and that's not certainly the case for us. Like we have teachers of our own ethnicity who speak English in a manner that Indians probably are more familiar with, but that's not something that Ray spoke. Like when Ray was giving interviews to American press, even though English wasn't his native language, but it was that of Americans, his English sounded extremely British and extremely accented compared to what, like, of course, like their accent is different. But what I'm like getting at is that it felt like he was a seasoned English speaker as well, and that is something that goes on with Siddhartha and Somnath, because they thought that, okay, this is English, we have to speak in a very formal manner, and they spoke in that manner. English wasn't really conversational at that point of time. English was used only when they were going to interviews, only when they were talking to officials, which is why they had this formal tone, right? And when they go back to their houses, they speak in Bengali. So that is why I felt that their accent is so important, because English was used only in those conditions where they had to go out, get their jobs.
A very high-end, high-class, a very professional.
Exactly.
condition.
And do you remember there was this another fellow interviewee who had
Yes.
asked him that, will the interviews happen in English? Then he's like, yes, probably. Then you have to answer in English as well. And then the person who's asking that is really scared because he's unable to do that. Like, so you understand that even though knowing English is not something that will probably cement his job in a place like the Botanical Survey of Botanical Department of India, wherein he was giving the job, like his first job was there only. It has nothing to do with botany, right? English has nothing to do with botany, but it has everything to do with botany and everything to do with the job simultaneously. So even though language is not something which is important in this context, it's extremely important because that is how you are judged. You were judged at that point of time.
Even 50 years from now, 50 years from then, even now, it's kind of like a thing.
Absolutely. You are able to speak in rooms of opportunity better if you know English.
And there is
I was about to ask you that only. Like, if that sort of hangover is still... I mean, I know it continues.
There is... Why do you think the Calcutta Trilogy is so relatable to a lot of people? Because there are tons of things which you can cite as hangovers which are still prevalent here. But as you can see, it's like he wants to rebel, and unlike Somnath, who is more malleable because he wants to get a job, he wants to get everything. Siddhartha is a person who already has some set principles within him.
Siddharth. That name, right? The whole principle and whatever that thing is.
Exactly. That's a good observation.
So when you have so much of set principles, you want to be a rebel. But then you realize that the system is built in such a way that you only will have to conform. That's what Pratidwandi is showing. I think
he's a fascinating character. I really like his character in this.
I think in a way, the two halves of his perspective are his siblings. His younger brother is what if his rebellion actually gave form. That is what his younger brother is. His younger brother wants to be revolutionary, which again ties into what I was saying, that during the 70s, the Naxalites were looking for students as new recruits.
Definitely. I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it's in fact, one of the few problems with my film is that the interrelationships between the characters are a little too underdeveloped. Like, the brother comes in for one scene and then leaves. The relationship with his love interest also just feels a little too fleeting to me, at least. But...
he met Kea for 2 to 3 scenes, if you think about it. Like, he met Kea on the day, like, she asked him to, like, repair the fuse. And then they met again when he came, and then Kea's father had arrived. So they went out to have lunch. And in those 2 times that they met, they probably fell in love. Like, how does that even work? But
that's the thing, right? They never say that they fell in love. They
imply that they did.
They imply that they did.
I mean, the implication was a little too unsatisfactory to me.
But
I understand.
What is remarkable to me is that everybody who is above Siddhartha always has that typical reaction. It's like, what problems do youth have? Youth have. You did not have any struggles. Struggles are what we had. What are you struggling against? What are you fighting against?
But I think he's just the reason I find this character fascinating is because how much he still wants to hang on to some of that traditionalness also. Like, there's that element of jealousy with his sister, like that, it's a very, I guess it's more that his sister is working.
Like, a lot of things to talk about his, like, how he treats his sister as opposed to what his general idea about women is. Like, what I think, if we start discussing Pratidwandi from scene by scene, from in the first proper scene, like a first scene is about his father like dying, and then
Dying, yeah.
like taking his father to the cremation place, everything like
Yeah.
that. Then the first proper scene is the interview, where we get to see that even though he knows that it's very risky for him to utter stuff like he happens to like really like the valor of Vietnamese people, he does that. Right. Just the next scene of it is him sitting in a cafe on his own, and then one of his college seniors, Norishda, I believe, comes to him and says that, why don't you come and join like our party? And he's like, no, I don't want to. So what Ray is trying to do is that he's trying to build up a particular assumption in your head about Siddhartha. And just the next moment, he's trying to break it. That listen, you just thought that he's quite political, right? So it's quite natural for him to go and take up the offer of Norishda and be a party's cadre, right? But no, he's not that. He is somebody who believes in something, yes, but there are various layers on that belief. Like what I was telling, that he is a rebel, he is a revolutionary, and he wants to like just become like Tunu, which his younger brother, but he cannot do that because his character has developed since. Like he knows what being a politically charged college student is, but he knows that he's not that anymore. He has to be a bit more mature. So why I am bringing that is that what we see is that there's a clear contrast between the two scenes. Now, the scene where we see his sister for the first time, or the scene where he is reprimanding his sister for not coming on time, was also the scene right after him almost objectifying women, like him mouthing lines like, now the weaker sex is the stronger sex. Have you seen how women walk around the streets? Have you seen the confidence with which they walk? I mean, don't you walk with the same confidence? Why aren't women allowed to be in there? And then suddenly when a woman is crossing the street, he suddenly thinks about the anatomy of the breast. And I'm like, that is absolute objectification. And then you come back home and you just cannot stand the fact that your sister is being,
because that's the palpable disconnect, right? That's the funny disconnect there. It's like,
so like when he comes back to his house and like he sees that this woman is talking shit about his sister, and when his mother is conveniently assuming that then yes, probably his sister is doing what this woman is suggesting, then he's like, no, do not ever think that. She has gone there to do her job, and the delay that is happening is probably because of some odd job that has popped up. So why are you always thinking that it is because she's doing something really funny at the site? So this is a kind of comfortable sexism that has been always prevailing in the Indian society, that when it comes to your own sister, you're like, no, I am the ideal person. But when you are talking about a person outside that context, when you're talking about a random woman you meet at your workplace, for instance, who has the chance of becoming your equal, you are completely patriarchal.
You're comfortable with objectifying her, putting her down, doing what, but trying to paint her in a negative light as much as possible, because that's the easy way to do.
Even there's another layer, no, because there's the whole idea of he goes to a brothel and perfectly finally judges the person who takes him there, and he supposedly has morals which don't allow him to sort of lose his virginity, I think, to this woman.
Oh yeah, the woman in the brothel.
And then
even though it is not about the women, it's so much about the women.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the whole, and then in the end, he kind of seeks a sort of romantic redemption, which is also very interesting. I mean, one of my favorite shots of the film is actually with Kea and him at the top of a place, and it zooms out of like this crowd, which is like in the foreground, and like the whole revolution is happening, and they are like so removed from it, but you can clearly see it, which is like a perfect shot of one of those. This is his contradictory self also, and the final shot is lovely. I think it's a good mirroring of the first shot.
But it's also funny, right? Because all of this which you explained, all of the comfortable sexism, the morals which are always at the risk of being upended and everything, all of this makes Siddhartha a person who has his own traditions but is ultimately aimless because he doesn't want to conform, he doesn't want to, stay within the confines of what the society during that time would allow him to be. It's funny that the only way he could achieve a modicum of peace is when he removes himself from the city.
I mean, it's I think what Anisha was getting at, the whole point counterpoint almost, one thing and then you cancel that out. The ending is exactly that also. He revolts, goes to the office, like breaks chairs, etc. You think, okay,
and
here's
just
the
the next
revolutionary.
moment, like we see him
Exactly.
that he's taken up the job of the medical salesman that he was so scared of taking.
And he's moved out of the city. And
Another
he's framed behind
Another
bars. So
question.
yes.
Another question. Did that revolt actually happen?
Oh, you
Did
think
that
it's
thing
imaginary?
I think it's very imaginary.
Got it.
I think it didn't do it.
revolt.
I think it didn't do it.
Okay.
I think it was angry. No,
So
not the final moment. I think the interview.
No. I know. The whole where he goes and trashes the whole place. Right? With anger.
I'll tell you why. Because every time he's imagining something, like he went to meet his boss, went to meet the woman's, his sister's boss. Every time he imagines something, the camera has
slanted.
Okay. Yeah. Every time he's imagining that's a dozen. Yeah.
That's a fairly accurate. It can be fairly accurate also. Like it is very subjective, like capturing his conflicted subjectivity also, right? Like
Besides, like it's so like if you think about the movie, when the first scene when he's actually going out there to get a job, if you think about that day that he has, like he goes to the job, he gets rejected by it, then he goes to sit down in a cafe in peace, then his his senior comes and he's like, what are you doing with your life? I have this medical
and his voiceover is like Gyan
Devanna.
Please Gyan Devanna.
I have to admit, like maybe watching these films together has made me realize how much I appreciate inaction and passivity in films. Like it just makes for very good cinema, I feel. Maybe for me.
He has so many things going on in one day. Like after that, he comes out, he thinks that let me chill for a while in the cinema hall, and then there's a bomb in the cinema hall. Then he comes out of the cinema hall, his watch breaks. Like he has been having the worst day possible. So, like, can you blame him? Like, can you blame him for like
if it was a Jack Tati movie, this would have been a comedy. Literally, if this was a Jack Tati movie, it would have been a comedy. And also interesting, each of the Calcutta Trilogy movies, the protagonists are all, first timers.
First time actors. Oh, wow.
First time actors. Okay. Dhritiman.
Yeah, Dhritiman and Borun Chanda, these were.
Borun Chanda. Yeah, Borun Chanda in Calcutta Limited or Seemabaadha. First movie.
Okay.
All of these were first movies.
I mean, these are great performances also.
Dhritiman was a star. You see that movie, you're like, where?
It's also very centered on him. Like it's very like there's no other perspective. Like it's very limited to his perspective, right? And he is very.
It's not surprising, right? Because Shaumitra's first movie was Opu Shankar, right? Or Aparajito. Opu Shankar was Shaumitra's first movie.
Yeah. Yes. The eldest version, right?
Yeah. That was his first movie. That was
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Nice. So, any other points? I mean, I've realized how much there's to discuss even about specific points of Pratidwandi because it's so fascinating.
Yeah. So, like the reason, another thing that I found interesting is that why does he like Kea so much? Like when. On the first scene, of course, like he was randomly called to like repair the fuse and everything, and he didn't really have a lot of time. But then Kea asked him to sit for a while and have some cha. Right at that point of time, Kea started talking about how he is a serious person, making a serious face and walking through the streets, and that is when we actually probably see Siddhartha laugh so heartily for the first time. It's almost as if Kea is the first person to not take him seriously. Like before that, we have been thinking, oh my God, he's such a sad person. He's not getting a job. He has so many things to look out for. And he has his sister and his brother who are all like doing whatever they wish as opposed to him who is trying to like keep the family afloat. We are having this very serious notion about him. But Kea is for the first time making him sound like a comic. Like he is this one man who's really angry and trotting through the streets and then he laughs at that. So probably he finds some amount of solace and some amount of comfort in Kea. And probably that is for the first time he finds a friend after like he left medical school, because before that the only two friends were the roommates that he had in
Roommates,
medical
yeah,
school.
who are revolutionaries,
Like
self-proclaimed.
even nobody to go out there and like talk to.
Yeah.
He just has his sister and his brother, and we have seen how the conversations with them turn out. Like he just sits and watches them speak, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Also,
But
continue. I will.
yeah, so that is what goes on to happen, that he for the first time sees that there's this one person who really cares about me, and like she really values the fact that I am spending some time with her. So I think that is why, even though he met her once or twice in her life, he wants to continue that friendship. Even he is not sure whether this will turn out as love, but he's like, we'll like write letters, we'll keep in touch. And that is a lot, that is a very big step when we think about 1970s, which is why we think, okay, this might be love. They're writing letters, oh my God. But they didn't have WhatsApp, right? They didn't have Instagram. They couldn't otherwise keep in touch. So that is, I guess, his way of starting a friendship outside the two friends that he had in medical school. And that's also him breaking away from the fact that he has to necessarily like keep on thinking about his past, keep on thinking about what he could have been had he not left medical school. So that is why I think he fell in love or like started a friendship with Kea.
Well, I honestly hope it works out for him in that alternate movie universe, considering nothing else seems to be good.
Also leave it to Ray to make fun of film festivals or film schools. Leave it to Ray to do that, of all people. His two friends going to the theater and are watching a Swedish movie.
Yeah, but
and they are bored. And they're bored.
They go to watch a Swedish film, right? On the next day, I guess. Before that, he went to watch a random movie which had this really big commercial about what Indira Gandhi is doing for the nation. So everything walks in opposites in this movie. Like every scene has their counter scene right after that.
The hilarity is that he and his friend were sold to go to the film festival because foreign movie means a lot of raunchiness and all that. That's what they were sold on, and they were bored out of their minds when they saw that movie. And I'm like,
you applaud Ray for making fun of the film club society which he was a part of.
He
made he along with Chidananda Dasgupta, who is like the father of Aparna Sen, were the makers of Calcutta Film Society. And then he also and that is what he says, that yes, I made it, but then see why people actually come for these movies.
Yes, I mean, I know for a fact. I know why people are coming. I'm not, I'm not so above them that I think that I won't understand. Yeah.
Okay, so we should move on, I think, to the next
you
film.
Haven't talked a lot about Pratidwandi. You say what are the scenes that you particularly like, and what is your general observation about it?
I mean, I really like it. Like in general, I think it's just I messaged Amartya on the group. I think we have like a Queen is Dead group, and I was like, he made Taxi Driver before Martin Scorsese made Taxi Driver, kind of like that.
My reaction was, don't say that. Bengalis don't need any more ego boosts.
No, but it's true. Like I wasn't expecting a film to be this centered on someone's psyche. Like I the first note I made was, this is very much my type of film, so me liking it is less of a revelation than anything to me. So like it's very much my zone, this whole sort of tormented protagonist who not just solipsism, just the fact that the protagonist is tormented and is kind of caught between these conflicted two parts of the world, sort of like that. And then whatever scenes you guys have mentioned, I think a lot of them I share. One of the elements that I will point out is there's a remarkable use of clock ticking in the whole film. It is very much representative of him being the sort of ticking bomb, almost, that he is, anytime he's going to probably explode.
You can also take it like he's also having a imaginary time, my time is running out. I need to do something.
Like subjectivity only in that sense,
Yeah.
like just
Like
this
he wants to be a rebel. Like in the
Hmm.
last scene where he actually does his small kind of rebellion, does it really matter in the broader perspective? It doesn't. Like there's
No.
this one rookie who's breaking chairs in one particular interview. So like screw him. But like for him, that is like his rebellion that he was slowly building up all throughout the movie. Like when his when his brother was telling that you were not the person that you are slowly becoming, you were the one who gave me that book on Che Guevara, you were the one who ignited the fire of rebellion within me. And then he's like, you don't understand how the real world works and stuff like that. And then he keeps the book in the bookshelf, and then
he
there's this
imagines
famous
himself like that also, right?
Rebel. So, and then the next scene, then he goes to his sister's boss's house and he tries to kill him in his imagination. So he has always been wanting to do something really out in the open. He has been wanting to do that. And even though in the broader perspective, it doesn't really matter, for him it does. And for some people who were there in that particular interview, it did. Like, to think of it, that there's this one person who came to give the interview and fainted. And the interviewers really couldn't care less about that. Really proves the fact that nobody will care about anything if you don't start rebelling right now. Like this threshold is growing bigger and bigger with every particular move. So if that is why these small rebellions in these small houses, in these small office chambers are important. And that is what Siddhartha was about. And that is not something that Somnath, who was also in the search of a job, probably had, because he had no problem becoming a businessman. He had no problem becoming a middleman or like a one who does this order supplies job. But Siddhartha always felt that this is beyond my pay scale, this is beyond my qualification. Like he does not want to become a medical salesman, whereas this person pretty much becomes a salesman, like Somnath, or a salesman, or Dalal, whatever you want to like term him as. So that is what I felt, that this movie is a wonderful, like it is a lot about Kolkata, but it is also a lot about Siddhartha, which is why Pratidwandi works.
It is also the most optimistic movie in the entire trilogy.
You think so? I mean, I guess what Anisha said did make me look at it in a more, my cynicism, because the film ends with such a shot, I was like, oh God, he went completely dark. Like if it ended on the revolutionary shot, right? Or like if it's a dream or whatever it is, but it ends with him getting moved out and being sort of
this is why I think that dream sequence, which I believe the interview, him breaking up the interview with breaking the chairs and everything, I still think that was a dream only.
But even if it's a dream and you end the film on that dream, it's like a vision of rebellion or vision of
but that is not conforming to what Ray's politics are. Like Ray did not particularly always side by the fact that what students were doing. He wanted to find a middle ground. He wanted to say that there's always a room for adjustment. So if he ended the movie in that, it might have felt that he is encouraging that. He's thinking that it is celebratory, but it isn't. It isn't celebratory.
Which is why I think
is not going to do anything.
And the solipsism of the character is why why the movie is so intensely focused only on Siddhartha. It's ultimately about his own health mindscape. The rebellion he does is within his own mind, his own soul. He chooses that job. He chooses that job so that he can get out of the city, so that he can rebel against, whatever.
Against... There is no rebellion left. That's the weird thing. The last shot distances him again from a whole. If there's a death procession going on. Go much further, and then the shot is of him turning away from it, like the last shot. This is if you see this as optimistic, Amartya, then we can just say how relatively pessimistic the other two films are.
That's what I'm saying. I'm seeing this optimistic in comparison to the
other two
movies. Because Seemabaadha is.
Why do you think it's my favorite film of the lot?
Seemabaadha is
Why
just a
is
genre.
Seemabaadha your favorite film of the lot? Let's
That is how we
talk
transition.
about Seemabaadha.
Yes, let's talk.
That is how we transition. Yes. Okay. So again, I think the simple answer to this is it is about a frozen passivity of the protagonist and not being able to, not even not being able to, not willing to look beyond their own self or look beyond their own world for that matter, right? And I think so. The film, tell me how to pronounce it before I butcher it.
Seemabaadha.
Seemabaadha. Okay. So the the central conceit of the film, I think, when it begins, is very much focused on this upper class, right? Almost you can say upper class only rather than upper middle class.
Yeah,
And
upper class.
so he's working for a multinational company, which is an important point, I think, and different. What makes it different from middleman.
No, we need to be specific because that's the fun of it, which Ray is always trying to portray here. He's so involved his own identity into the job that he can't see beyond his job. It's
he describes himself to be the manager of the
fan division.
Oh my God, it's fan division. Sorry for that.
Fan division. Yes.
Of Hindustan Peters, because where he has been living, the house is a quarter that has been given to him because he is an employee of Hindustan Peters. The fact that he is going to race courses, the fact that he is being able to afford those restaurants, the fact that he is living the life that he is living, and he is identifying himself as a successful person. Everything is related to the company, because he wouldn't have gotten any of this without the company. So that also proves the fact that how people were extremely insecure about their employment status, and how once they got that, they just latched onto it like
an identity crisis. They did not.
Absolutely. And I think in the beginning, I think the beginning montage is absolutely fantastic. Like his introductory montage, like leading up to the the credits and all that. And I think it details so much. Like just
also the credit scenes. Also the credit scenes.
The credit scenes are the split screen almost, right? I mean, I was blown away by the whole iris. He zooms out with the iris for each of the members, creating like a hierarchy on screen, which is like
the flow chart.
The flow chart. And I was like, this is
how was he able to edit? How was he able to do that at that point of time?
I was like, this is firstly, I don't expect, again, my problems of limiting
very
filmmakers into a box.
Dhruv, just like your podcast.
yes, absolutely.
For once I didn't have to crack that joke.
See, the point is, I'm going back to the point, is that creating that flow chart actually is amazing, because it automatically details the hierarchy that's at play within the system, how he's at the bottom of that system looking up at the higher ups. And I loved how isolated the circles are. So like, this is going to super specific into just the technique, but like just isolating the circles and the people within them kind of just makes the connections impossible between these people. So again,
and
like
probably
the whole distancing
he and the manager of he was the manager of the fans division, and then there was the manager of the lights division, lamps division. Sorry,
lamps, lights.
So
whatever.
These were the only two people who were Asian. These were the only two people who were Indians, right, in that particular flowchart.
And
so
they were on the same level, right?
And that also adds on to the insecurity. Like they are not the part of the A game. Like it's almost like I had just started watching Succession, and there's this one line called that what will happen when my father knows that his family run business is not family run anymore. So it's almost like Hindustan Peters was opened by, like, it's an insides job. Like there are a lot of people who were very related to each other, and then they opened this company, and they have just about started recruiting Indians, and they are probably the first ones to go to that decision making level, being Indians, right? So that makes them doubly insecure that that any time, at any point of time, they'll just be driven out of the company. So they might as well start cementing their position in it.
That's the whole rat race thing also, no? And it's the whole competitive drive they have with each other, despite, of course, showing that they are friends and all that. I mean, that's very indicative, as you mentioned, Succession and recent stuff. That, to me, I think
it's the corporate culture. It's
and I think if the film was just about the corporate culture and the way it would just be like a great film in general. I think what makes it special for me is just the introduction of the Tutul character, who is played wonderfully as usual by Sharmila Tagore, who's one of my favorite. I think
fantastic.
She's so fantastic. Good. In this again, like, when is she not good is kind of the phrase, I guess.
She was so good in Nayok. I was spellbound by her in Nayok.
And there's always a very big difference that has been made out of Tutul and her sister, and how they are so different from each other. And how probably Shyamulendu will be more concerned to hear about Tutul's concerns as opposed to his own wife's concerns, because Tutul has this idea, has this way of putting forward what she feels, and like, she wants to be treated as an equal. If she does not know the answer to a question, maybe because she was shortchanged because of her gender, she was not informed as much. She's coming and asking the question that, okay, this happens, you know why it happens, but why does it happen? I don't know, fill me in. And
but it's
that
so
is
weird,
why she
though,
constantly
right?
asks
But
questions.
it's so weird that gaining social mobility, being able to live in that high-rise apartment, has made the sister the less liberated one, and the person who's coming from the outside town,
is the more liberated one.
So it's playing at that. That's one thing. But I think Tutul's character is fascinating because she isn't her point of view is not just like that moral point of view. She apparently has a rebellious, he has a revolutionary boyfriend, right? Her sympathies throughout the film are swaying also between the revolutionary, supposedly, if he's there, we are not sure, like, it's an insinuation almost, and this guy, and their relationship, I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, was quite provocative. At least it felt so. Okay. Because this strand,
she was openly falling for her own brother-in-law.
This strand is there in Pratidwandi for 1 second also, about this guy figure marrying the sister of their deceased. In that movie was of their deceased wife, and I was like, this is a bit. Was that like a common thing? It's so weird.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't born then, but like, I'm guessing
we have heard a lot about it. We have heard
at that point of time.
Yeah, and it was
so I am guessing that why Tutul wanted to marry him, because like, she was really bedazzled to see that what a beautiful life he is living, and the fact that he has been able to like get that. And besides, Tutul always talked about that. Whenever my father sat down, he talked about how good a student you are, how good you're doing. Shyamulendu has always been a very aspirational person, and Tutul just wanted to be that aspirational as well. And she didn't know that only because she's a woman, she couldn't possibly be that aspirational. So that is the only way women were told to, become. The only way you become aspirational is you somehow get associated with somebody who is quite famous, who is quite popular.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
A logical way to do that is, oh my God, let me fall for him.
Let me fall for this guy. Yeah.
Anyway, there's the very obvious, but I think wonderful symbolism of the whole high rise and like, the low, how he can't literally see beneath his house, and like I think Anisha wrote about this also.
The revolution is occurring, but it's at a distance. It's,
I mean, there's this one house party that they had, and the revolution was happening in background.
Yeah. I don't understand why people don't like this movie and think it drags. I was riveted during the house party scene. I'm telling you, I could not look away.
But I think the most indicative, like the biggest condemnation of our main character here, I think, and why I think I really responded to and really liked the film, is how it, more than even the sort of visual separation between, the high, low, or whatever we were talking about, it's that he only wants to transgress his personal boundaries with, like, he can only think about marrying.
His position.
No, not even his position, but even like the only risk he's wanting to take whose impact that which will be noticeable is by having a relationship with his sister-in-law, basically. I think Tutul is that bridge, between him and that revolutionary figure, right? She's almost the middle person there. And
so you are thinking that she's connective tissue to a life he's very curious about,
because she's swaying between the two, right?
Because he also empathizes during the party scene. I don't even know whether that's a implied, but he's empathizing. We should empathize with the youth,
But that scene is very quickly cut out when the guy is
because that's it. That's it. He can't look beyond that.
Exactly, and the sort of the idea is that she, because she's also swaying, right? She's thinking, should I fall for this guy? Should I not fall for this guy? But he can't. If he can't even cross that bridge or reach that bridge, how far is the distance between the revolutionaries? Kind of the thing.
The chasm is huge.
It's that. So because it's working not just on that visual level, but on the narrative level also. I think in that sense, by splitting the perspective, and her perspective is so wonderfully captured, Tutul, when she arrives. You kind of get this point of view where they're like, we heard guns, the sound of guns and bombs, and she's like, it's so calm here and so peaceful here. And
we are on the 8th floor. We are on the 8th floor.
That is what his sister, her sister also informs her that this is good that we are on the 8th floor. Yeah. We can't get a lot of noises here. There's not much dust.
Pollution. Dust.
So again, it's I thought
also that shot impressed the living hell out of me. That split shot,
the wide shot of them sitting in two different areas with the you sent me it's the thesis shot, and I was like,
this is the thesis shot. Tutul is sitting, the shelf is covered with a lot of memorabilia, almost showing how much knowledgeable, how much learned she actually is, how much thoughtful she actually is. In contrast, he is sitting there, it's only, blank circles. And that is like how much hot air he is.
Yeah. No, it's very weird. I would have probably just liked it a lot because of how good it does the whole critique of the upper whatever. I think Ray's too, again, your humanist thing comes here. He's not nearly as judgmental as I hate to put down Succession here, but I have a problem with Succession sometimes because I'm just I hate these people. I don't have any sympathy with a lot of them, or much sympathy with any of them. Here, it's not sympathy with the main character, but it's you don't absolutely hate him. It's you can kind of that smidgen of why he's so intent on doing this rat race.
And the dialogue during those party scenes, they completely get it. They completely get that, the Bhodrolok, people, how they talk.
I mean, there's the whole old men vulgarly looking at, there's a lot of that actually.
See, and the funny thing is,
you're never made to feel comfortable about it. You're never made to feel, even though that used to happen so often, you're never made to feel that this is okay. Which is something that probably a lot of Hindi movies of that particular time made us feel that.
They still do. There's no denying that.
The proclivity of this Bhodrolok culture to use metaphors to mask all of their emotions by using clever metaphors all the time. That is so wonderfully captured, and that is intensely, insanely relatable. Because this hasn't changed much. This still hasn't changed.
Another
much.
Thing that's not changed. What has changed?
Good question. I really don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
Besides, whenever you look at the women walking in Hindustan theatres, they are always the assistants, they are always the receptionists. They always have the desk right outside the room where the actual decisions are being taken.
Yes.
The room where
are they Indian? I've
They're
forgotten this.
Indians.
Are they Indian? The
Yeah, they are
like the
Indians.
secretaries, or are they?
They are
Okay.
Indians.
Okay.
They're
But
very
what
trained. They are very trained. Their English is very accented. I'm pretty sure they
Okay.
have been
they have a
shown.
very accented English, and they always are secretaries and assistants and everything. That is quite common because that is like the most, like that is what women could think of. Like if you remember, Siddhartha's sister as well, she told that in a month or so, I'll probably be promoted to become the boss's PA. And that is, oh my God, the
That
biggest
is a big
job
thing.
that I can hold. So you always see these PAs, you see the receptionists, you see the secretaries, everybody, their desks, their work desk is right outside the room where executive decisions are being taken. They are right at the middle, they are just at the junction of that, but they never enter the room. They are never a part of those executive decisions. Like they'll wait outside these men who are going to take the executive decisions. They'll go in. Everything will be mediated by these women, but the women will never be a part of these executive decisions. And that just proves that what was the condition of women, apart from the obvious things that how Shyamulendu was like openly flirting with this one woman and telling her that your hairdo isn't really working for me, please change it and stuff like that. It's like,
very madmen. It's very madmen.
Madmen.
It's really difficult for women to navigate these office places, because when it's almost like I watched Gunjan Saxena the other day, and although people told that it's a very, very bad movie, I really didn't find that. Like, it actually made us understand that workplaces like these are rigged against women. Like, it's not possible for you to have a sane mind and be your own best self and work in a way that a man probably would, because the atmosphere is such that it is diminishing you every second. It's not possible for you to work in your best possible manner. You'll be like, why am I being treated? And that will be treated in this manner. And that will be the most important thing that lingers in your mind, as opposed to, this is my job, how can I be better at it? So
the whole exploitation angle, whatever, exploitation doesn't need to be sort of explicit, right? Of course, it often the most
it almost becomes the norm.
Also, Samurtha was speaking of Tutul. Tutul is a very knowledgeable person, right? But she's unable to use that knowledge and get herself a job. Like, it's almost as if you're unable to monetize your studies, even though you are very studious and a very meritorious female student at that point of time. You are very meritorious. You will be told that, oh my God, you're such a good student, but at it, just that. Even though you are a good student, it's very rare that you will be getting the CEO's position or the executive's position, although you have the same amount of knowledge. So, and that is something that speaks a lot. Like, Tutul probably did that because she was the one who felt very reduced every time his father talked about Shyamulendu in such a celebratory manner. She felt that he is this mountain that I need to achieve and I need to become like him. However, even though she became almost like him academically, she could never get a job as the assistant sales manager in Hindustan Peters. She would never be able to get that amount of that lifestyle, that authority that he has over the lifestyle, that wouldn't possibly be associated with her, because she's a woman and she's unable to do that. Like, how are women able to take so much authority in their life? It's unthinkable. So that is what, like, she probably was so knowledgeable because she felt that knowledge is important. She felt that becoming a BA will help her understand a lot of things. Even then, she was unable to know a lot of things, which is why she constantly started asking questions to Shyamulendu. Each time she comes across something weird, each time she comes across something she's unaware of, right? And that is not something that is present in her system.
She's the one who detects the faulty fan also, right? She points it out to him.
She also probably tells how to orchestrate that protest.
She didn't know. She didn't know, but she was the one who implanted that seed in him. That's the thing.
Besides, do you remember there's this one line that she has, like she, her sister, and him often went on rides in his ambassador, right?
Yes.
So she asked him, Shyamalendra, that do you know these guys who are dying, like with this unemployment crisis totally in the backdrop? She's asking, do you know these guys? Then he's like, who? The guys who are dying? And saying, yeah, or the guys who are like who are shooting them or who are responsible for their death. Do you know them? Then he's like, no, how would I know them? And then he probably becomes that person who's responsible.
Yeah, absolutely.
He orchestrates that protest and he becomes the person that Tutul was asking, that, do you know him? And like, wait for a second, at the end of the movie, I'll be
him, basically.
The cause that doesn't know the effect.
Yeah,
I mean, he's the cause that doesn't know what effect.
And he was also the person who was probably sympathizing with the students. So, like, that is what, even though you don't want to become a certain kind of person, when you enter this rat race, when you enter this particular corporate world, then there is no stop to you. Like, you have to become the next. Like, you have to get promoted right now or you get out of it. So he is constantly insecure that if I don't get this promotion, if I remain stagnant, I'll be dragged out of it. And at that point of time, he is obviously going to think for himself and he's obviously going to fend for himself. And that is how he becomes the predator. He becomes the reason why these movies are made. And we see from the other perspective, like, from Pratidwandi and from Jana Aranya, we get the perspective of a struggler, and now we see a person who is in the who is in the position of making those decisions, of employing these people probably, or who is at least on the other side of the spectrum. And we see why do they become the way they become? Why do Indian men who understand what it is, why is it so difficult when they get the job? Why do they become the way they are? Like, if you remember, the people who were conducting these interviews and asking random questions to Shomnath and asking random questions to Sridhatu were also Bengali Indian men. They know what the condition is on the other side of the spectrum. They are not British. They are not foreigners, as like the owners of Hindustan Peters probably are. But even then, they have the crudeness within them. Even then, they have this attitude that take it or leave it, but I'll be asking you random questions nonetheless. They are like this because there is a reason that, and there has been a lot of problems that they had to face in order to go to the other side of the spectrum. Now that they are on the other side of the spectrum, they are unable to sympathize because that is what happens in hierarchy, right? They feel that if I have struggled, then why shouldn't this guy struggle as well?
Yeah.
And that's quite relevant because that's what has been happening 50 years down the line, even now. Like, that's pretty much been the case in my hospital, for instance. That has been the case with my consultants. So
it's the oppressed and the oppressor narrative, right?
And the oppressor was the oppressed at one point of time, but now that they have been able to cross the line, they couldn't care less. That they are like, please, like, struggle on. I don't care.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing in engineering colleges with ragging. First years get ragged, in second years they become the person
ragging
who are doing
is
the
like
ragging.
Exactly that.
It's the same thing.
Psychology.
The empathy dissipates. Empathy dissipates as you go through that crucible because
another common theme in our next film that we are going to discuss, because I have to transition somehow. It is true though, right? The last film in the trilogy is also a lot to do with. I mean, you've talked about empathy, which I think, and the lack of it, or the desire to have it but not being able to express it, or not wanting to in some senses. That's prevalent in Amartya's favorite film also. And I don't know, Anisha, what's your favorite film of the three?
Amongst these three?
Yeah.
I think Jana Aranya.
So both of your favorite films. So go ahead, describe, tell me what it is about.
I told you a little bit about it while we were discussing over chats, that I find Jana Aranya to be better because if you are a beginner, if you are if you do not know about the political climate of Kolkata, you'll probably be briefed about that climate better in Jana Aranya as opposed to Seemabaadha and Pratidwandi, where they start off with the assumption that you know about what has been going on in Kolkata for a while. You know why things are wrong. But in Jana Aranya, Aranya, you probably see that firsthand. Like, you know what goes on, like when the copy is being checked by the examiner. You know why the examiner is giving him an average mark, because the examiner is physically unable to see what he has written. And why is the examiner physically unable to see what he has written? Is because the examiner doesn't have a correct powered glass. And why does he not have that? Because he's not correctly given the remuneration that he probably deserves. And that is a systemic problem. Now the examiner gives him a random 50% or 60, 45, 50%. 40%. And that is like, people will die at this point of time if they get 40% at this point of time.
But for Calcutta University, that is pretty normal. Which is why my point number 2 always stands. That is one of the biggest assholes of universities. I am not even discounting that. I am serious.
Absolutely, I understand. And that is what, everything is relevant. See, everything is going on even now. So
you guys are not promoting this to anyone related to Calcutta University, please.
We both have a mutual friend who came from the same university. She agrees with me.
Okay.
Yeah, so the point is, like, when you happen to see that and he happens to get that marks, then he goes out to search for jobs, and then you physically see a Jana Aranya. What does that mean? Like, Aranya is forest, right?
Human jungle.
Jana is people. You just see swarms of people like moving from one office to the other office to get the application forms. Then you submit those applications forms. Then you may or may not get a call back. And when you get a call back for the interview, you are asked random questions, and you're not even asked, you're not even encouraged to ask questions like, how is it relevant for my job and stuff like that. So you understand that this is what a common man goes through. And there is enough and more reason for you to be jaded by this, and enough and more reason to stop this and just start rallying against whatever has been going on. Because even if you follow an honest man's path, even if you try to give a good exam, even if you try to apply for every job that is available, even if you try to do everything by book, you're not able to get a job at a point when you are expected to marry, at a point when your girlfriend's father and mother is expecting you to get settled down so that you can marry. So you're unable to do that.
And your girlfriend dumps you at a park bench. Which is
the girlfriend doesn't dump him. The girlfriend's father makes it impossible for the girlfriend to do that. Right?
Exactly. Which is just...
So that... he, for the first time, happens to show us the inside picture of the entire thing. He shows us that it is nearly impossible for you to be fine at that point of time. He has this friend who talks to, who goes and talks to this MLA probably, and the MLA is like, I know everything is rigged against you, but what can I do? I am
This is a little
comfortable.
bit in Pratidwandi also, no? The whole the minimal interactions with the sort of higher ups as you're detailing.
So he's like, I can't do anything. Like, I'm way too comfortable. I can't break my code and go on the other side for you. So you deal with
the MLA
it.
is literally telling them, like,
and then
we have all done struggles. Tomrao for a struggle, and he's raising his hand
for the
up.
Country, right, or something.
He's raising his hand up and looking comfortable while he's saying, do the struggle. He's raising his hand up like that. I'm like, irony dies a million deaths. Clearly, this is just whatever.
Besides, his friend becomes a taxi driver, like, for that MLA, even though he probably like was a university graduate. Like, what on earth is going on when that is the best shot of your employment after being a university graduate? Besides, like, when the movie starts, it starts with a classroom full of graffitis, and then there's this unfazed invigilator looking at the students who are keeping on cheating. And why I loved Jana Aranya is because of the graffitis. Like, there's this one scene that he's moving and there's this big pillar against, like, he's moving behind that, and the pillar has stuff like China's chairman is our chairman, the power lies in the mouth of the barrel, stuff like that has been written in Bengali. And just the next scene, he's passing through that same place again, and there's been spray painted. These graffitis have been spray painted. Like, these two scenes are positioned right after the other, and you understand what is going on with this. Like,
because years pass. This movie comes out in 75. This is the biggest. 76. This is the biggest difference. Seemabaadha comes out in 72 or 3. Pratidwandi comes out in 71.
Sorry, I'm correcting you, but I've just noted down the release dates.
Yeah,
70,
exactly.
71 and 76, yeah.
Yeah, so there's a huge gap in between these.
So when Satyajit Ray wishes to speak about politics, he does this in this manner, as opposed to, like going out there and being a part of those
So
comrades or
fatalism.
cadres. He is always looking at these movies from an outsider's perspective, as opposed to, for instance, the person who is within these political rallies. Pratidwandi is about Siddhartha. It is not about Tunu, who is probably the revolutionary, who is more associated with the armed rebellion. Why does he do that? Because a common man, is probably not going to be that revolutionary. There are higher chances that the person is not as associated with the revolution as Tunu probably is. So in that case, we will be alienated, but so that we are not. And even then, we get the sense of it. He's always talking with perspective of the outsiders.
Yeah.
You are understanding it. You are facing the challenges that these armed rebellions are having on your cities, but you are not a part of it. And there are high chances you will identify with that kind of a protagonist, as opposed to a protagonist who is very much associated with these protests.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll get a very different type of movie if it's about that protester. It's a totally different form.
I think Paudatik is basically about that.
Which one?
So that will be interesting to note. That I will watch
Paudatik
Paudatik in a way now that I haven't yet watched it. So is Paudatik talking about that revolutionary? Is he talking about the life of that person, or is he broadly talking about the revolution? Or is he talking about the impact that revolution had on that revolutionary? I will be very interested to know about that.
More or less that, because Paudatik follows a revolutionary who is escaping from the police and he hides out in a house. Okay. And Sen intersplices it with real pictures of real revolution.
So it's going that. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So it's like properly like a biopic.
That is also a humanist take, but it is about a separate kind of a human. So
but the films will be totally different, right? Because the the politics are different actually.
Sen's perspective is very, Sen's perspective is very, it's not understated. It's very aggressive. He's very focused on that. The politics of it is very focused on that. That's why even interview I think was about, it could be a mirror to Pratidwandi, but interview is also very specifically about
that. Sir, आप seeds बो रहे हो और comparisons के बाद में बो
Yes, no, but the point is that continue. It's okay.
No, I was just asking Dhruv, for instance, what was your favorite scenes, or what do you find
in Jana Aranya?
Yes.
I had watched the first two films, and you had messaged saying how the third film kind of is the most indicative of what is happening, and I was like, because I like the first two so much, I was like, I am not sure about the third one, because I like generally very oblique approaches to bigger situations. So I like people looking at it in a slightly slanted way. This, I think, is a little too, it goes full head in, which I appreciate. Like, there's a lot of stuff in here which I really, really like. I think whatever pessimism is there at the heart of this film is appealing because it's done very well also. I think one of my reference points for this were a lot to do with how this film moves between the two spaces that were previously explored in the two films. I thought that was fascinating. How the film goes, because he's the middleman, he can go temporarily to these two places. The one place is the one with his friend who's living in an area where he meets his sister, and how they're living in sort of a very low income household and they are not having basic amenities, versus when he goes to meet the sort of suppliers and the buyers, I think, in hotels and sort of these places. And the contrast between those two, I thought, was fascinating. I guess I'm less of a fan of using the father character as this some old moral symbol who he
But
kind
he's
of
also trying to understand their
Yeah.
perspective. He's always constantly trying that why are they like staging these armed rebellions? Aren't they scared? Like, what he has been constantly asking this question, that what has to be so wrong in the society that you actually are you're giving away all your inhibitions and you are so small yet, and then also you start rebelling against a particular cause so vehemently. Like, what wrong has happened? Like, he is unable to understand that,
the
but he
father
wishes to
character, right?
understand that.
Yeah.
Fathers
And
are very
that
important. Fathers are very important in this trilogy as well. One father is important in Pratidwandi by his absence. His absence is the source of the aimlessness of Siddhartha in a way, because he
The
doesn't
rage,
have
right? The whole fire in the
yeah,
foreground and all that are also
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. The
Yeah,
other
I
father,
just remember that he told that my father did not really leave much for me.
yeah,
And then Norishda is like, it's not possible for an honest man to leave much for
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
children after living a proper life.
yeah, exactly. And in the second movie, the father is not living with them. He's living comfortably in another place.
Yeah.
And when he comes to their house to visit them, he is perturbed. He's almost shocked. It's almost like a culture shock. So many guests. Because he can't recognize
And
his
then
son
they're
anymore.
separated into another room itself, right?
Yeah. He can't recognize his son anymore.
Yeah.
This father is the closest Somnath has to a moral hook. And that is also fraying away because he
Why
can't
what
understand.
father compared to what fathers were at that point of time? He's trying to understand what his son is doing. He's trying to be supportive, even though it is
Progressive
historically
in a way.
impossible for him to be supportive. Like
Progressive in a
when
way.
Yeah,
he does not have a role model. Like, his father does not have a role model of another father who was supportive of a son taking up an alternative career. He still wishes to understand that if you are happy, I am happy. He constantly reminds that to him, that okay, even though I am anxious about my son's well-being at this point of time, he is doing something. And he's actively like thoughtful. He's sitting on the veranda and waiting for his son when his to come back home and tell him that I got this major order that I was so scared about. So he is looking out for his sons, especially because their mother is not there in the picture. He has been always the only parent looking out for both of his sons. So even though he has some really objectionable ideas, he is looking out for the son, right? So that is also why I feel that Somnath did not turn out to be what Siddhartha is, because he has a father who is at least present in the scenario. His brother is extremely supportive of him, even though his brother has been touted as someone who is much more popular, well established and academically better. He has his even after that, his brother always like tells him that, so what happened that you are a bit different, he will find his way out, something of that sort. Then he has this supportive sister-in-law who is like, I will give you money if you don't have money. Have I not been paying for your cigarettes already? So he has this nice warm home to come back. Therefore he is okay taking a risk. He's okay going and doing something like an order supply in a far less cynical attitude than what Siddhartha would have. Like, he knows that if I go back home, I wouldn't be reduced. I wouldn't be like thrashed as Siddhartha's sister and Siddhartha's brother did. And Siddhartha's mother was unable to give him any kind of support. Like, Siddhartha's mother knew nothing about what he was going on to do. And his sister was completely different from him, and so was his brother. So Siddhartha actively went to their rooms, actively started the conversations. Why was he doing that? He wanted some support. He wanted to talk. He was looking out for friends in his siblings. He was unable to get that, which is why he was so happy when he got Kia, because for the first time the woman saw him for what he is. Like, the woman reduced his tensions by telling him that, please chill out. You are not, you're making the things far greater than what it actually is.
No, I mean, you brought up that point, and that kind of made me like one moment more in Jana Aranya, which was one of my problems when I literally just watched it like an hour ago, so maybe I need to let it sit a little bit. But I think it's one of the films, and Ray generally does this wonderfully, and this moment also happens in Seemabaadha is with the
Yeah.
watch. The watch is used really well.
The
Wearing the watch.
Seemabaadha's ending and Jana Aranya's ending is almost similar, no? Like both of
It's
them
very
want to do
haunting.
something to get promoted to the next level, and then they
Absolutely.
wrong the woman at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
They wrong the woman, and then and then in the both of them hide. I mean, in the case of Jana Aranya, one of them hides behind that door which is constructed. And
Also
so,
in Seemabaadha's ending, did not ask you. Seemabaadha's ending, he leaves the watch open, he puts it on the table. The immediate next shot is her disappearing.
I was like, I was surprised
And,
he
this,
had that.
and the camera
her
also
fading out.
elevating,
Elevate,
and the camera also showing that there is a fan.
Yeah.
Okay, so that fan is not just a fan. Fan is like indicative of the employment that he is
His
so
status being
associated
the
with.
sort of his status being present, but the other side of whatever he wants to accept is not. But I did like what you're mentioning, how about the differences and how these two characters actually made me appreciate the final scene of Jana Aranya more, and maybe how when he comes back to his house and how the division there plays a role in how he's getting more separated from within.
Light and shadows.
It gets much more
chiaroscuro,
engulfed by shadows as much as
especially
it goes
the last scene. The last scene is so shadowy. It's intense. It's also very Dickensian genre.
Yeah, this is what I was reading. Can you explain what Dickensian is for a person who's basically book illiterate or novel illiterate?
No, it's basically populated by characters who are morally repulsive characters, but who are also very comical.
Okay, got it.
Morally repulsive characters who are
basically the guy, the main, at least the guy who he hangs out with the
most. There are two guys.
Yeah.
One is Utpal Datta's character who gives him the job, the salesman job.
Yeah.
Utpal Datta is fantastic in this movie. He's like,
he has the best dialogues.
Yes.
He has the best dialogues. Like
made me laugh out loud.
Something like you are a Brahmin son, so even if you are you really you don't have much money, you wouldn't be starting a business of random fruits in
basically that.
So I had a smirk at that point of time. So I understand that these are things that that I have been more acquainted with because I'm a Bengali. That is something that probably you are not as much acquainted to, because that's not something that goes on at home. But those are just little things that he's not. The broader perspective is still something that you will completely understand.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, but that's the whole thing. I mean, what were you saying, Amartya? What were you championing?
Utpal Datta's character, his mannerisms, his inflections when he's teaching Somnath. It's still funny, but it's also like, Somnath is a swimmer who is slowly paddling into the water, and Utpal Datta's character is the life coach who is pushing him slowly.
Who also tells him though that I won't save you. I'm just a rocket.
Exactly, because he's the life coach. He just pushes him in. Him in. Yeah. And Notovar Mittal, the late great Robbie Ghosh.
Yes.
Hats off. The late great Robbie Ghosh, he's the shark.
Yeah.
He's the devil on the shoulder. He is that speech when he's eating at Flurys.
Yes.
Flurys, by the way. Yeah. When he's eating at the Flurys chicken omelette, By the way, the chicken omelette is actually.
What is I was about to ask you, I've never heard of chicken omelette as a dish.
It's basically an omelette in which you put chicken pieces in it.
Oh, okay. It's nothing like fancy.
No, it's no. But Flurys chicken omelette is actually good. That's what I'm telling you.
We are not sponsored by them. Go ahead, say whatever. Yeah.
They won't sponsor us anyway. So, my point being that when he's giving the speech of the chicken omelette, he eats the chicken omelette completely. He takes Somnath's chicken omelette. Yeah, he asks, "Khaben na to?" Pushes it down. He doesn't wait. And then he says, would you give your life for a cause? Adorsher jonno pran dite parben na. So you're basically both weak in spirit and weak in body.
Yeah.
That speech it simultaneously broke me and it simultaneously made me applaud. Because that's the cynicism down to a cynicism heightened up to 11 at that point.
Yeah.
This is a guy, this is effectively what Somnath will become. as more time will pass.
Yeah.
Because Satyajit Ray doesn't leave the movie at a very redemptive arc. He leaves the movie at that exact
it's
moment
not
when he gets the
redemptive,
job. It's not redemptive. So it means that one day Somnath will become almost like Notobarmitte. This is the worst case scenario or the best case scenario, we don't know. But this is the scenario.
It's the worst case scenario.
That is something that's also there in Seemabaadha, no? Because when he orchestrates that protests, the person who helps him do that is like, you have to do it regularly. Now you better get used to it.
Yeah.
So even when he was for the first time, when he was very scared about the watchman who got injured, and then he comes back to his office, and then he's like, these are very predictable byproducts of things that you have to do from now on to cement your position. Then he shares a laugh with him. So that is really
that's a very
morbid.
sinister
That
moment.
laugh is very
really
revealing. That is morbid laugh.
Like
when they're
you were
talking about
just
the
scared
injured
about this person's ill health. You were the reason why this person has this big bandage around his forehead. You are the reason why why this person got physically assaulted. And now on the next scene, you are given some amount of cushiony feeling that okay, it's fine. You're just going to do it every now and then. From now, you become the predator right at that point of time. And that is like, it's not about unfortunate things happening. It's about unfortunate things happening so often that you become very
used to it,
okay
immune
with
to it, right? Yeah, whatever you.
and that is what both Somnath and Shyamulendu will eventually become.
And then the third guy
which
is just.
probably Siddhartha resisted. And which is why he did that
why he escaped from the city.
Which is why he left.
Which is why he left. Yeah.
By the way, thought that leaving is far better. Like he thought that if he doesn't stage this rebellion, if he accepts this, there is no end to accepting anything that will be thrown at him. So, and that is not something that Somnath or Shyamulendu
have any scruples about. They don't have any scruples about
they are okay with it. They are okay with it. Siddhartha is not. So even though Siddhartha is the most negative character in the sense that negative mind, he has a negative mindset. State of mind, not mindset. State of mind at that point of time. He's probably the hero he's the force that we should reckon with. That in his cynicism lies a very understated optimism that if everything depends on you, you take a bad step or you take a good step, and that spirals on to bigger things. Like every day you get up, you do a personal choice, whether you want to become the person who is just a cog in the wheel and continue with the problems that has been going on in the society, or you take up a step for you and in extension for a lot of other people who are looking at you as an example.
More to discuss, guys. I think this episode I will have to split into 2 parts because I think
I don't think there is much left. I mean, we actually talked for 2 hours. Is it 2 hours? Yeah, almost.
It's more,
almost
I
2
think.
hours.
No, it's almost, or is it more? If it's more, then I will split it into 2 parts. The episode, that is. But yeah, I think that's...
Okay, now our next project is Montage and cinematography, and then the podcast will be about
filmography. I think Calcutta Trilogy
comparing this with that, right? That's because Amartya, you've laid the groundwork for that there. So
I also have to write an
back
essay
and
on
discuss the comparisons that are there in the two type of films.
I have to write an essay on it anyway. So
so perfect then. So I mean, you'll be automatically prepared. And I'll be happy to watch. I have not watched any Mrinalson actually, so I'm very.
I'll start watching from now on.
By the way, I hated Podatik when I first saw it. Okay, so it's like this is going to be new for me because
next time, next time whenever we're recording, I hope you guys have seen one of the Appu films so that we can champion it. I guess.
Okay.
So weird. Where I've seen the Appu films, but you guys.
That's why I'm telling you, we would both be murdered by Bengalis.
Don't push that narrative so hard.
Don't push
come after us.
You people are not actual Bengalis anymore. How dare you?
So at least you have that identity or whatever of like having like that obsession. I'm from Delhi. Like, what identity do I have in that
I do
sense?
not have any obsession. That is what I'm talking to you
No,
about.
no,
Like, I did
but
not watch movies.
no, but
I did not
Calcutta
watch movies the
people.
way I did before pandemic. I was a very random person watching few films that I really loved, and those weren't commercials.
Hmm,
And there were other normal films that a civilian would have watched otherwise. But like
hmm,
watching international filmmakers, good films is something very new to me, and in extension, native filmmakers like good films, or I
yeah,
also watched very recently.
yeah,
So, yeah, I don't like the point is I don't like the general stereotype of Bengalis being really obsessed, or because I have seen a lot of Bengalis who don't know the first thing about these. So,
yeah,
just randomly, not stereotyping, this idea that is prevalent is not necessarily the truth. And I also don't like when people randomly call Kolkata Calcutta at this point of time just
Oh
because
yeah,
it's quite nostalgic. I mean, it's not Calcutta anymore. I have never lived in Calcutta. I have lived
we
in
have lived in
Kolkata.
Kolkata. We have lived in Kolkata.
So why do you want to talk? It's just, I mean, you showing that, see, I am like better than the rest. See, I have this very Atel kind of attitude in me. So
Atel is a very prevalent word we should use.
I don't know.
Atel,
I forgot the English word for it though.
bourgeois, bourgeois.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
just don't like it.
the
okay,
bourgeois or the
That's very
pretentious.
gatekeeping. That's as if like people who have learned literature or people who have been in association with the literary works from the very
hmm,
beginning are the only
Yeah.
ones who will probably be able to critically analyze films that I have never been that.
Oh,
hmm.
we are not going to get into that rabbit hole because that's a separate form of conversation.
So
Honestly,
next
Okay,
में और
listen.
क्या करना? Yeah.
yeah.
I am just getting a call, okay, and this is an important one. I'm really sorry to leave it randomly.
No,
Okay,
no, it's okay. Cool, cool,
It's
cool.
okay. It's
thank you
okay.
so much.
No.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Honestly.
So yes, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Anisha, especially for coming in today. And I think we'll definitely have you next time whenever we're discussing the Mrinal
Yeah.
Sen trilogy. And you can follow her at Maze of Mumblings on Instagram. I will also link all the not all the but like 2 or 3 really great articles she has written and has been published on different sort of websites. You can also follow Amartya at Amartya25, correct, sir?
Yeah.
On Instagram, and then you can follow him also on Letterboxd at Amartya.
Letterboxd Amartya. Yeah,
Yes.
it's just Amartya.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I didn't say anything else. And then you can follow me at Terminal Cinema if you want to on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. I've not been low energy. It's just that I have to speak softly. Because
Low energy was me.
No,
Honestly,
you were fine. I think it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We are allowed to be a little low energy. You you put too much energy in the last one. I think
Oh yeah.
you're still reeling from that, right? So yes, thank you so much for listening, and khatam. See you next time.